Okay. Well, that was a beating. We are on the air.
Okay, cool. Just tried to get some news out about the latest commitment. We'll talk about that later, but first is first. That was an ass beating.
That was a total. I would say more aggressive expletives. That was a complete beating, and it may well have been that they could have gotten 70 points on Tech if they wanted to. This is a team that is rolling right now. This is a Georgia team that if I were Alabama, I'd be a little bit concerned. I'd be more than concerned. I'd be more than a little bit concerned. This is a Georgia team that can beat Alabama and knock them out of the playoff.
They're playing better and better each week. I mean, that lost to LSU seems like a long, long time ago now. I mean, they're clicking on offense. The defense is getting better and better each week, especially against the run, and they showed that today.
No question. And Dylan's having it right, so Matt will hold.
All right.
But, so my background in this whole thing is obviously I grew up in suburban Atlanta in Tucker, which is DeKalb County. When I was a young child, I went to elementary school in Decatur, and Georgia Tech adopted our elementary school, and they brought Buzz to the school, which everyone was excited about, I guess. Not everyone. But it's always been a rivalry to me that sticks out more than Auburn, than Tennessee, than South Carolina. I mean, my history with Carolina is only that I went to college there. If I didn't go to college in South Carolina, that game would be to me like what Tennessee is for me personally. But Georgia Tech matters.
Well,
all the time.
I think losing to Georgia Tech probably stings
way worse,
more than a loss to Florida or Auburn or any of those teams. I mean, losing to Tech stays with you the whole year.
No question.
And it doesn't happen often.
It's terminal.
Yeah, it is, and that's what gets coaches fired. And
Mark got fired not because of his performance against Georgia Tech, but previously the best way to get fired at Georgia was to lose 3 games in a row to Georgia Tech, and your ass was gone.
Yeah.
And I don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
I don't want to proclaim that this will never change. I'm not stupid. Georgia Tech will be better, I would imagine, at some stage. We just had a phone call interrupt our podcast.
One of Dylan's girlfriends.
Yeah. I'm not naive enough to think that Georgia will always run all over Georgia Tech. I'm also not stupid enough. I can do math. And in my lifetime, I don't know how many times Georgia has won, but Tech's only won 11 times. And so now we're sitting, so that means 31 times Georgia's won, or 30 times Georgia's won. It is hard right now, being prisoner of the moment, to grasp that Georgia Tech will beat Georgia next year in Atlanta, a place where they haven't won since last century.
Yeah.
But all good things do come to an end, including this winning streak for Georgia Tech in Atlanta. And streak is a little bit of a aggressive word for 2 times happening in a row.
Yeah, I just think Tech has to. They're not a team that recruits, but they still have to recruit a little bit better and more. They got to, when they compete with Georgia and occasionally, rarely beat Georgia, they have a good defense this year.
Correct.
Like you said, they do not have a good defense. No. I'm not expecting next year's to be much better. But the only way they beat Georgia, except in 2008 when Georgia decided not to tackle that game. Georgia Tech has to have a defense that can contain Georgia's offense. Obviously, today was.
I thought that Tech would lose this game on defense. I thought, I'm sitting there going, well, I'm watching the option, and I'll be honest, watching it on TV, I enjoy it. I enjoy watching
when it's clicking.
Enjoy watching Georgia Tech play.
I love watching Georgia Southern play. Kennesaw State play. Kennesaw's putting up 60 points with this.
Here we go.
Oh, come on.
I do not enjoy photographing Georgia Tech and Georgia because it's tough to do. Now, there are plenty of pictures to be had. With that said, Paul Johnson has had about as much success against Georgia now. It's somewhere in the George O'Leary category now. So something like 3-7, 3-6. 3 wins over Georgia at Tech is a huge deal. Not sort of a big deal, a huge deal. But the world has changed dramatically in this thing because it ain't Tech that's changed, it's Georgia. and to compound on that, you know, Tech sort of has a rivalry with Clemson. They're hitting both those schools right now at a really rough time. The score with Clemson was very similar to the one with Tech here. Now, Georgia beat Tech's ass a little bit more, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's the same ballpark. I'm totally being a prisoner of a moment here. It's hard for me to see this changing soon.
I was going to say that earlier. I don't see it changing anytime soon either. But, and again, Kirby and this defense and this staff, they have this triple option, you know, down to perfection. I mean, Georgia had 0 offensive touchdowns until the very end of the game.
Tech, you mean?
Tech, yeah, right. They had the 100-yard return, but then they didn't score an offensive touchdown until late in the fourth quarter. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
3 times Paul Johnson has won this game against Georgia. This is easily Tech's biggest game of the year, and
it's their Super Bowl.
It is not even close.
Yeah.
Whereas Georgia has Florida, you know, Auburn. Next year they'll have Notre Dame. You know, next week Bama.
Yeah.
The 3 times Paul Johnson's teams have beaten the Dogs have been, and there's a couple other times they could have done it, but they didn't. The 3 times that they beat them, 08, 14, 16. Now, I've talked about this enough to where our audience should know what happened in those years. It was not about offensive failure necessarily. In 2008, Georgia scored a shit pile of points against Tech.
5 touchdown throws
they were
by
throwing
Stafford.
all over them. It's whenever the defensive coordinator is new, they struggle. Jeremy Pruitt would not listen. He would not listen. Georgia had it figured out. He backed the line away and the linebackers away. For what reason, I'm not sure, because Grantham had them completely figured out. Pruitt would not listen, learned that lesson. In 15, they only allow 7 points against the Jackets. In 16, there's no question Kirby and them didn't totally know what they were getting themselves into. How could you?
But that was a team that Tech played their hearts out that game.
Man,
and
I think Georgia people shit on Tech a little too much. I think you've got to give those teams, particularly in 14 and 16, from Tech, particularly 14, they had tremendous mental toughness. Not some mental toughness, tremendous mental toughness. Those Tech wins were classics.
Yeah. They earned those wins.
Now, in 08,
well, the squib kick, though. I mean, if that doesn't happen, Georgia wins the game.
No question.
But
Paul Johnson, I respect and what he's done there. He has taken them from being a crumbling empire, if you want a lack of a better term, to functional. I mean, under Chan Gailey, they could not beat Georgia. It's better now. It's not a lot better, but it's better. But you know, Paul, when he has good teams, they're tough.
Yeah.
These guys today were not in the same category as Georgia, and this is a tough Georgia team too.
It was so bad.
No, they beat the piss out of them today.
And Taquan Marshall is not Josh Nesbitt and those guys either.
2 of the wins for the Jackets have come with that fabulous quarterback that they had, whose name has escaped me. Justin. Number 5.
Oh, the
Justin Thomas?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the only guys.
Former Alabama DB.
He's one of the only guys in Georgia Tech history, in modern Tech history. There's not that many people who have beaten Georgia twice as a starting quarterback.
Right.
Joe Hamilton and him. That's it.
Yeah.
And Joe Hamilton, I should have asked Kirby this. He was in a good mood and everything. But Joe Hamilton's ass was out of bounds in 1998. That's why they lost that game. They missed that call.
What do you think Kirby would have said, though? He would have brushed it off?
Or he would have tried not to say it, but he knows the deal. You know the deal, Kirby.
See, I thought when, Georgia gave up the 2 garbage touchdowns, I thought to myself, Kirby's going to be pissed that they didn't finish this game. I was unsure of how he would react, even though they beat Tech's ass.
They shut it down, though.
Yeah, they let their foot off the gas at halftime. After they went up, 45-7, that's when he said, all right,
this team has got, to borrow a phrase from Paul Johnson, has got bigger fish to fry this week. And you better get your Munson shit out of your head. Like, people are going to do this Munson thing, I heard the same thing from my wife when Clemson played Alabama down there in Tampa. We're going down there, but no, Georgia can win. Not just could, they might. Like, I'm not so sure that people shouldn't be confident coming into this game.
This is the best I've felt about Georgia's
You
chances.
should. I mean, like
right this second.
the way that they're playing right now. And when I was playing sports in college, it was about not necessarily who did you play, but how did you play. Georgia, how did you play, is playing pretty well lately. And who did they play was pretty good too. I mean, the Gators, I don't know the score, but I think they won.
41, 14, 42, 14.
So the ACC is having a tough night.
Yeah,
tough. But it's predictable. Georgia has beaten the brains out of the Gators, the Cats, and, you know, they beat Auburn pretty bad too, and now Tech. So 2 straight years of sweeping the Gators, Auburn, and Tech. It's hard to, I mean, these are the modified glory years at Georgia. And people need to realize...
It's the beginning still.
Well, it is still the beginning. I mean, Kirby's only 43.
Yeah.
And he's got small children. The only thing, and I do not say this lightly, that could derail this thing right now is health. I mean, Kirby's health is an important thing. People need to, that is important. And you never know when something can happen to you, period. So, and he's got small children. I don't say that lightly. But this, Tech is what they are. When Georgia's not unbelievable, Tech could beat them.
Do you think Paul Johnson is on the hot seat now, or could be? No. Do you think he's there?
No, because
he just got an extension though, right?
It wasn't that long ago, but you can't start seasons 1 and 3. Like, that's a real good recipe to get the seat very hot.
Well, if Georgia Tech ever wants to win a national championship, it can't be with him.
You were thinking, and you're right, but they are Texas Tech. They're
okay with 7-5, 8-4.
Well,
but they've won national championships in their program's history, have they not?
They've won a lot of them in the 20s.
Well, yes. In the 20s, but they had more recent ones.
They have half of one.
The one in 1990 is a little controversial. Needless to say.
Very.
Okay.
So they get half.
That was a very good Tech team again, and then they lost 7 years in a row to Georgia. So,
it was a fluke, but it happened.
They beat the piss out of the Dogs that day. That was on December 1st, 1990. That was a good Tech team. That was 28 years ago, I guess. So, if you're Tech, I don't know how you solve this riddle, because you are in the most fertile spot, with maybe the exception of Miami in the South in terms of talent. And, Jaden Hazelwood lives 10 minutes from you, 15 minutes from you.
Yeah.
What if you were a run and shoot offense and you had Justin Fields and Jason Hazelwood and that was your style?
Yeah.
With Paul, no, they're never going to win the national championship.
But
they have been good with him.
It's a nerdy school. They run a nerdy type of offense there. The triple option fits with Georgia Tech and all that.
It's fun to watch. I don't care what people
say. When it's clicking,
it
can be.
Good. When they're good, it is fun to watch.
But
other teams do it, not.
But the problem for Tech, when you and I watched Louisville play Tech, and they were beating the shit out of Louisville, and it was hilarious. Because if you don't do the basics,
you're going to get run over.
You are going to get killed.
And you got to play physical, too.
For the record, Kirby talked about Tucker Reck. There was no Tucker Reck. It was Tucker Lyons. And no one in Tucker Lyons ran the option. Not that I remember. We certainly didn't. And it is, though, a throwback to when the play call was, okay, we're going 34, break, which means hand the ball to the running back and go to the right-hand side. I mean, that's basically what it was. Texas is more complicated than that, clearly.
Did you just scold Kirby on his knowledge of Tucker youth football?
He's got to be scolded at times.
I mean, I don't go talking about Bainbridge pre-high school stuff.
Who beat Buford last night, by the way.
Good for Bainbridge.
Yeah.
Tucker, sadly, has not been a good playoff for Tucker. Very rarely does Tucker lose in the first round. They most certainly did. Yeah. And meanwhile, Marist is winning. So all sorts of problems on the Tucker front. But this was a beating. This was a complete domination by Georgia. 40-7. I mean, 40-something to 7, whatever it was.
That's as close as 2002 as you're going to see. I don't think it was.
I mean,
was this worse than the score? Won't indicate it.
Was not as bad as 2002, but it was close.
It was close.
And I felt sorry for Georgia Tech in 2002, and I said that out loud to somebody, and they said, "I don't. I wish they'd score more," and they sure did. And that was like 35 to whatever. I mean, they were beating Tech bad.
Georgia could have scored 60 today.
I think they could have scored 60, no problem.
Yeah.
But when you pass,
I mean, that's just old. That seems like the frequent deal with them. It's like, oh well, they could have scored 100 points, but instead they scored 25.
Let's wrap it up this way as you finish up your stuff here. they're going to need to score as many points as they're going to be passing passing up any points next week.
No.
You've got to score points. You've got to beat Bama.
They've got to play their best.
We don't know what Clemson will do, but I mean, come on, right? They'll win.
They'll take
tonight.
care of business.
They'll win tonight. Now
Yeah.
they could lose next week. I kind of doubt
Really,
it.
that's a weird statement from you. You're usually very, very solid.
Clemson will blow
Clemson could
one.
lose at any second of the year.
You know what? Clemson has proven over time with Dabo that they could lose any game they play. But I'm going to go ahead and make the argument they're going to beat the dog stuffing out of the Cox tonight.
And who they have in the AC?
Pitt, a team that they've lost to before, with not that long
2
ago.
years ago, I think.
Whatever. I mean, you get the point. So let's just stick Clemson in there. They're good. Let's assume Notre Dame handles business. Michigan's done. Ohio State's, gosh, that's going to be tough for them to get in there.
There's going to be people
with Michigan losing. Does that mean if Georgia wins that Alabama's out? See, I think now.
I think Alabama.
I think Alabama's in no matter what now, unless they're losing to Auburn somehow. I think they're in no matter what.
We got in the car, Dylan. You said what? They were up by 3?
Yeah, up by 3 at halftime, 17-14.
Oh.
Georgia totally should go into that game with the mindset we're here to win. And I got that today when I talked to the kids. Kirby did his deal. I don't know that.
They're going to come in confident for sure. The way they've been playing, they should.
They should. I agree. All right. Riding home. We're home.
All right.
We got Matt trying to do technology.